In this video, we're talking about 3 books that have crashed in a major way, and they're not your typical offenders. The reason I picked these 3 books is because there's really interesting points of conversation around all of them. There's also even upside potential for one of them. But before we hop into the list, I want to give a little update here on the packs. We have about 1,200 packs left of the Bryce Comics Training Pack available pre-sale now at brycecomics.com, and I'm going to start offering a 10-pack option. So if you buy 10 packs, it'll be $500. You get a discount for buying 10 packs. And the reason I'm doing that now is because I think everybody's had an opportunity to buy a single pack that wanted to buy into it for a single pack. And so this will be a little push to get us to sold out pre-sale. Thank you so much to everyone for the tremendous support of this project. It's been super stressful. There's just shipment after shipment and managing all of these different, loose ends with distributors and, the pack people, the COA people. I got the COAs delivered the other day, and it's like a 6-foot tall stack of boxes just for the COAs. And it means every single one of those I have to put into the bag and board with the comics. It's way more work than I thought it was going to be, but I'm starting to get excited about it because, just seeing those limited to 26 sketch variants or of these books, they're really cool variants. The Ultimate Wolverine and One World Under Doom and the Red Hulk. I mean, these are really cool comics, and I love comics. And so I'm getting excited about it to actually get these out. I think you guys will be really happy with them as well. So let's hop into this list. I'm going to start out with one here that is performing really well overall, but there's a specific grade that has had a major correction. I'm talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Last Ronin, #1, the first appearance of Oroku Hiroto, the grandson of Shredder, first appearance of Casey Marie Jones, the daughter of Casey and April. And the reason that this book is exploding so much, first of all, it's a fantastic read. If you haven't read this, you need to read it. It's really good. If you're a Turtles fan, of course, you've already read it. But in April of last year, we got an announcement that Paramount was to adapt this into a bloody live-action film. So people are really excited about that. I'm sure the film will perform well, but this book is performing incredibly well. It had a print run of $130,000, which is a massive number by any standard. 130,000 copies is a lot. And I remember this is right when I first started as being a full-time dealer, and I ordered some copies and they were allocated. And so even though they printed 130,000, it wasn't enough to fill orders. There were more orders than 130,000. And I think it was allocated to 80% or something like that. So if you ordered 10, you got 8, something like that. And then there was a huge number of damages. But all of those things considered, it's still a massive print run, which is why it's so impressive that this book is performing so well. If we come over here and look at the 9.8 of cover A, it's selling for over $200, which is, when you factor in that print run, is a lot. $220 was the last sale this month for a 9.8. But what I wanted to talk about was the 10.0, because the 10.0, when it started hitting $2,500, $2,600, and you had a peak sale of $2,600, I mentioned in a video to avoid this book at all costs. Don't pay $2,600 for a 10 of this book. I got lit up in the comment section, they're making a movie, it's going to the moon. But where I was coming from is there's just a massive print round for it. 9.9s and 10s are relatively not rare for this book because of the format. It's a square bound, and there's just more 9.9s and 10s of this. And there's so many copies out there, and there's going to be so many more 10s coming to market. And then sure enough, it did correct. The last sale corrected over 50% down to $888. The main reason I wanted to talk about this book is because it illustrates a point that I was talking about with a buddy of mine about the difference between a 9.8, a 9.9, and a 10. And just know that if you're buying this book, you're buying the label, okay? You're buying it because it does look cooler with that big gold 10 up there in the corner, or even a 9.9. I mean, you notice it, but you're definitely not going to notice the difference between the book. I mean, there is no way to tell the difference of this book between a 9.8, 9.9, and 10 through the case, except for the little number on the label. But I wanted to talk about the psychology of a 9.8, 9.9, and 10, because if you come and take this cert number, the last 2 digits in a cert number are for that particular submission. It starts at 1 and goes up to 25, and then they start over again. So there's 25 books per per submission. And if you type that in over here and backspace that and go to 1, well, let's just take a look at this submission in general. So here's another book in this submission, was a 9.9. Let's come over here. The second book in the submission was a 9.9. The third book in the submission was a 9.8. The fourth book in the submission was a 10. The fifth book we already know was a 10. The sixth book was a 9.9, et cetera, et cetera. So the point that I want to make is that the main difference between a 9.8, a 9.9, and a 10 is the psychology of the grader at that time when they graded it. If you send in multiple copies of the same book, you're definitely more likely to get a 9.9 or a 10, because then they can comparatively grade them and look at them and say like, okay, these are definitely all 9.8s. They're all, nearly perfect, and some of them are better than the others. So let's give some of them a 9.9 or a 10. And so because of that, there are plenty of 9.9s and 10s of this book and many other books that are just encapsulated and graded as 9.8s. In fact, Matt Nelson himself has gone on the record to say that the reason he didn't do a 9.9 pre-screen is because he doesn't have the resources to grade each book and, meticulously look and see if there is an argument for it to be better than a 9.8. So he's implying that it's a pass-fail 9.8. When you do a 9.8 pre-screen, because of time, it's a pass-fail. And then every once in a while, they'll take a closer look and say, oh, maybe these are a little bit better than a 9.8. I mean, imagine if you're sitting there grading stacks and stacks and stacks of books, hundreds and hundreds of modern books a day, and it's a 9.8 pre-screen. I mean, you're just going to do a pass or fail. And then every once in a while, something will come across your desk, and then you get into the psychology of saying, well, wait a minute, maybe these are 9.9s, and I would imagine you have a little period of time where you give out some 9.9s and 10s, and then maybe the stack piles up again and you're back to just 9.8 pass fail. So just know that if you're buying a 9.9 or 10 of this book and pretty much any book, you're buying the label and not the book. And one of the things that is congruent for all three of the books on this video is print count and distribution method. And that's one of the points that I wanted to make with this video, is it's not just about print count, okay? There's the distribution method comes into play. So if it's a limited store exclusive and it's limited to a certain number, they're going to be higher grade and more available than if it's distributed under the normal distribution practices. And there's a lot of stuff that can happen with normal distribution, like this one, where there was a ton of damages because Diamond they can't even handle regular size comic books. And so when they got this oddly sized comic book, they didn't know what to do, and damages were all over the place. And this next book will be a good example of that to kind of further explain what I'm talking about here, is Spider-Verse number 6. Spider-Verse number 6 had a print count of 19,000 copies, which is relatively low for a normal distribution order all you want. It means all the comic shops in the world could order as many copies of this as they wanted, and they only chose to order 19,000, which is relatively low for that distribution model. Now, if you had a store exclusive that was limited to 19,000 copies, it would be worth pennies, because that's just way too many for one store to distribute. But if you spread that out over the 22 or 2,500 comic book shops that exist in America, and each one only orders a couple, and it's a casual collector that picks up Spider-Verse number 6 that's not even paying attention to the market, and he puts it away in his long box with no bag or board, or maybe tosses it under his bed. Next thing you know, if it's distributed under normal circumstances, 19,000 becomes a really low number. And so that's what I mean by the distribution method plays into the rarity of a book as well. But this book, in my opinion, had no business ever being a $2,000 book. So back in 2022, it peaked for $2,000. This was just classic good old FOMO about the Spider-Verse 2 movie that came out in April, I believe, of 2023. And so the promotions and everything started to come out in 2022, and that's when the FOMO really hit for this book, resulting in a peak sale of $2,000 and a ton of other sales around $1,500, $1,400. When I got this book in recently and looking up and saying, wow, this book's worth $250, and then going back and looking at how high it actually went around the first appearance of Sea Spider, Sun Spider, Spider, Spider Requiem, Spider Sting, Garden Spider, White Widow, V. Did anybody really think that these characters were going to like carry the Marvel Cinematic Universe or something? Whenever there's like so many characters, Spider-Verse characters in particular, I mean, it's obvious that there's just going to be a small cameo on the screen. I mean, there's like a minute chance that a small cameo of one of these characters would turn into a fan favorite and become, you know, a recurring character. I mean, minute chance. So the fact that this went to $2,000 just blows my mind. And now it's currently sitting at around $200, which is a very respectable price for a book that was open order and it had 19,000 copies printed. So the point here is not to cast any judgment on people that FOMO'd into this book. You know, the forces of FOMO are strong, and I feel them too. I feel you guys. There's no like judgment whatsoever if you overpaid for this book. I just wanted to present this as like a word of caution that, you know, minor supporting characters don't have that staying power. In order for the book to have staying power, it needs to be somebody that's going to show up over and over and over again. Because what we saw with this book is before the movie even came out, it corrected. I mean, it was down to like, it came out in like the middle of 2023, and that's when the book came back into like the $600 to $800 range. And then after the movie came out, it went all the way down to $300 to $400 range. And then this year with $200, and I don't see it going up much more than that. Next on the list, we have a very interesting conversation to have here about Something That's Killing the Children, number 6. And in particular, we're talking about the 1 in 25 retailer incentive by Jenny Friesen. And this, I remember the day when Ross Ritchie, the then CEO of Boom Studios, who's recently retired, said and made an announcement that this was the rarest Something Is Killing the Children variant in existence. And I remember it just exploded because this was peak Something Is Killing the Children hype, and everybody was so excited about it. And with this one little tidbit about what's the rarest one, now all of a sudden this book has more going for it than just a minor key and a cool cover, because this is the first appearance of Aaron and Cecilia, which will be supporting characters in the show when the show comes out. But I don't think there's going to be like any hardcore Aaron and Cecilia fans. I think the main flex here is that you have the rarest variant of Something That's Killing the Children. And this comes back to the distribution method. So the reason Ross Ritchie said that is that this was like a really low print count. I think it was the lowest print count of the regular issues, and it's the incentive for that. So it naturally follows that that's the rarest Something That's Killing the Children variant. There's definitely rarer variants that were distributed other ways, but they're not as rare because of the distribution model, if that makes sense. All right, so this is a really interesting little point of discussion about the hobby that's very nuanced, okay? So this is not the rarest Something Is Killing the Children variant by any means. I mean, there's store exclusives, and there's a lot of other variants that are way more rare. I actually have Something Is Killing the Children, Zoo Orzu foil. It's a reprint. It's a really cool book, but it's limited to 75 copies. And all of them are CGC graded 9.8 or better. There were some 9.9s and 10s of that as well. But that book is, you know, worth like less than $100. So if you did the math here, if 14,000 copies were ordered, it means that retailers would only qualify for up to 560 copies. But that's not the full picture, okay? Not every comic shop ordered 25 copies, okay? So it would be even less than that. And then there's the other thing that Boom Studios likes to do, which is they like print extra copies of incentives. It's not like that they'll cap it at 560. They'll print more than 560 because of having to account for damages and things like that. So it's actually unknown how many of these actually exist out there. But if we come and look at the CGC census, there's actually 142 copies on the CGC census, which is shocking to me. 44 of them are signature series, 98 of them are blue labels, for a total of 162 on the census, which is crazy because of how few you see on the market. Like, I don't know that I've ever seen a signed copy on the market. I think collectors are holding on to this book tight. And even though they're holding on to this book tight, it wasn't enough to save it from having a massive correction. So this book had a peak sale of $2,750 back in 2021, and the most recent sale was $1,000. Now, I had a copy just come through the shop, and I listed it for $1,100. It literally sold within like 1 or 2 minutes of being on the website, and I got like 4 emails from customers and friends of mine that are like, what the hell, Bri? I thought we were friends. Why wouldn't you tell me that you had this book? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't know it would be so crazy. I mean, I listed at 1,100, I believe, not like a little bit higher than the last sale, because just how much of a ghost this book is. So the fact that there's that many 9/8s and that few that hit the market, I think that collectors are either holding onto this book really tight and just waiting for the right time to dump it, or they just actually really want that feather in their cap to say, like, I have the rarest Something is Killing the Children variant. Even though it's not the rarest variant by a long shot, the distribution method and the way that you have to acquire it is what got that price to go up, up, up. You know, it went out to all of the comic shops in very limited numbers. Collectors actually bought it, and then they're not willing to let it go for less than a certain amount of money. The price goes through the roof. Whereas myself, if I get 75 copies and I want to sell 75 copies, you know, it drives the price down because I'm going to have a reasonable price for it. So it's just a very interesting part about this hobby that factors in print count and distribution model and how that relates to prices. I hope that this video was interesting and helpful and insightful of all the cool nuances to this hobby. I love this hobby. I hope you guys are enjoying this hobby as much as I am. Thank you as always for sticking with me to the end of the video. Don't forget we have those 2 monthly giveaways here. If you subscribe, comment, and like, you're entered to win a free slab this month here in the YouTube giveaway, and we also have a giveaway over at brycecomics.com. I've got some really exciting new collections coming soon to brycecomics.com. Use code COLLECT10 for 10% off and sign up for that newsletter while you're there to get entered to win a free slab each and every month. Thank you for sticking with me to the end. We'll catch you in the next video. Bye.